Dad, will you tell me a Christmas story before bed?
What do you mean, a Christmas story? Everybody knows there's only one true Christmas tale. One that is the truest, most sincere, and accurate telling of the Christmas tradition.
So you're gonna tell me that one then?
Yes. Well, it begins with good old Kris Kringle himself, otherwise known as Santa Claus. You see, his brother Kringle Kringle...
What? Santa doesn't have a brother.
Listen, son. This may not be the most rosy-cheeked, giggly, fun-loving retelling of some bullshit Christmas story, but you'll be learning about the real gritty details of the holiday, so strap yourself in, little man, because this is, without a doubt, the truest Christmas tale. They're twin brothers, Kris Kringle and, of course, his lesser-known brother, Kringle Kringle. Kris lives deep in the North Pole where he resides to this day. Most people will tell you that he runs a quaint little workshop filled with elves who love to craft toys year-round to deliver to children every year.
What do you mean? That is what happens.
Absolutely not. Now, it's true that Kris spends most of his time in the North Pole making toys, but instead of making them for children, he makes them to keep for himself and play with because he's a weird guy.
Does he have a childhood complex like Michael Jackson did?
Exactly like Michael Jackson. You know, son, it's a good thing that this Christmas story has a reference to the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Rest in peace. Now, we all know that elves don't exist, but it is true that Kris has recruited a squadron of shorter-than-average men and women, mostly from Singapore and other islands off the coast of Southeast Asia. He's a fat, selfish old man and thinks of nobody but himself.
So what about Kringle Kringle? What's he do?
Well, he lives on the South Pole, on the other end of the world. He isn't interested in toys, but don't get me wrong, he's also a fat, useless old man. He mines coal all through the day just to power his enormous flying industrial steam engine locomotive. His primary concern is flying across the world and stealing as many of Kris's toys that he can fit in his cabooses.
What's a caboose?
I'll tell you when you're older.
Well, why does Kringle steal the toys if he doesn't like playing with them like Kris?
Well, Kringle just wants to foil his brother's plans and be a jerk. You know, he's so much of an ass that on his way back to the South Pole, Kringle likes to try out a bunch of sweet train tricks like flips and spins just to show off. So when he does this, the cabooses holding all of Kris's toys start to drop them everywhere. And the other problem is that he can never find his way home because his only GPS is a Garmin from 2003.
73 Griswold.
He usually gets so lost that he traverses the entire world and accidentally drops toys everywhere.
How do the toys get in our house?
That's simple. He drops so many that a lot of the time they just fall right down the chimney and into people's living rooms. Coincidentally, some toys bounce around enough to knock over the plate of cookies and milk, and then the family dog comes in and gobbles them up. That way it seems like a dirty old man has entered your home and eaten all your treats.
What about the toys that don't go down the chimneys?
Those toys land on people's roofs. Some people use their trusty Christmas ladders to climb up and take them to give to their kids, while others don't bother and they leave them for the gardener to find when he cleans the gutter every month.
I like this.
Another tradition started when some of the coal from Kringle's locomotive would fall down with the toys, and parents didn't know what to do with them, so they just let their naughty kids chew on them or whatever.
What? That's not how the story goes!
Come on, Dad, I'm trying to tell my son the true account of Christmas.
Well, shit! Why did you tell it wrong then? How do you explain Christmas stockings or the Christmas tree? I'll tell you how.
Grandpa, do you have a different story about Christmas?
You bet your powdery behind I do. It's called the Truest Christmas Tale. You see, Kris Kringle, and of course his brother Kringle Kringle delivering toys was no accident. They began as jewel thieves who found that they could gain easy entrance to people's homes through their chimneys. They broke in on Christmas Eve night, and people started to expect them every year. It became common practice to hang rancid, smelly socks over the fireplace to ward them away. The brothers had different ideas of how to get past the socks. They would fill the socks with peppermint sticks and pine tree air fresheners. The brothers never agreed on anything, So after a few years, they parted ways. They continued their thievery on their own. Kringle had the idea of tricking families by bringing measly gifts like wooden horses and weird, ugly dolls, which made the parents believe that whoever was coming in wasn't so bad after all. Of course, Kringle only did this so that he could rob them blind of their precious gems.
How did they get around all the houses?
At first, they tried to climb the sides of houses to reach the chimneys. That wasn't working very well. They could only steal from a few dozen houses in one night. But one year, Chris made a discovery that would change everything. He came upon a clearing in the woods that was filled with levitating ponies, later named reindeer. He used them just like the songs say, as a team of friendly animal companions who helped him spread joy across the world, and of course, to steal precious riches.
What did Kringle do?
Well, he fell out of the public eye, and nobody heard from him for a long time. His brother was delivering tours throughout the world, and he sat at home trying to come up with his master plan to top his brother. It was like this for around 50 years, up to the present day.
Does Chris still have his faithful bunch of reindeer?
To maintain their magical properties, he ground up their bones into a fine powder and infused it into his sled's skis. It's much easier than having to feed and care for 9 enormous flying beasts.
So, whatever happened to Kringle?
He recently came out of hiding and unveiled his greatest plan yet. For all these years, Kringle sat and studied Christmas and all of its traditions. He picked apart his brother's every move and noted all of his advances. After years of research, Kringle created the fastest, most powerful, and famous reindeers of them all. Here's a small cassette tape with a song that explains it. Give it a listen.
You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeers of all? Kim Kardashian, Tony Dancer, the artist formerly known as Prancer, and Richard Vixen, Comet Romney, Cupid Gooding Jr., Donner Trump, and Wolf Blitzen.
Was that you singing, Dad?
No.
So that's how it happened.
That story's hard to believe, Grandpa.
From then on, Chris couldn't compete. All of the traditions were changed. They changed the Christmas tree shops into the Kringle tree shops. All of the traditions centered around Kringle instead of Chris. He's the new Santa Claus. Now he's the only one who delivers gifts on Christmas. Chris will occasionally suit up and deliver some toys to the boys and girls, but he is often stopped by his brother Kringle.
Dad, will Kris Kringle and Kringle keep doing this forever?
No, they'll be dead soon.